In this video, I'm going to show you how to go from insurance agent to agency owner, where you have other people in your business that are working for you. So you not only have a self-sustaining business, but you have a self-growing business. Everything that I'm going to teach you in this video comes from my direct hands-on experience. So I have two insurance agencies. I have one that focuses on under 65 health insurance, and then I have another one that we are just starting that focuses on the senior health and wealth market. And not only that, but in my business, Insurance Advertising Masters, I have worked with over 1,500 insurance agents, helping them to take control of their marketing and bring it in-house. And doing that has given me the unique luxury of being able to observe over 1,500 insurance agents and see which of those insurance agents actually enjoy their life, actually are creating an agency that can be self-sustaining and self-growing. And I'm going to share those insights with you guys right now. So there are two mainstream ways to grow an insurance agency, to go from insurance agent to insurance agency. The main one and most popular, particularly on the life side, and still I would say in under 65 health, annuities, Medicare, this is still the main way to grow an agency. And that is the downline model, where you are at the top, you recruit agents, they come in, they're at a certain commission, you're at a certain commission, you make a spread, so anything that they make on sales, you get a cut of. The other option is what's called an LOA model. It is gaining much more popularity and traction in the insurance industry. But if you look outside the insurance industry, this is a more traditional way to run a business. It is where you focus on business principles. You're focusing on your skills of sales initially, which almost all insurance agents have built up if they're established whatsoever. But you also need to focus on marketing. You need to focus on accounting. You need to think about cash flow in your business. You need to think about all of the traditional business skills and principles. And then you're going and hiring. So you also need to focus on being able to recruit talent that you can hire, which is easier than recruiting for a downline because you actually pay a base or a salary. You're creating very specific to-dos for them to do. You're typically providing them with leads and appointments, and they just come in and perform a job, which is either going to be, admin or a salesperson, but they just need to focus on sales. But the difference is that you're creating a business where you're hiring people instead of recruiting them. Now, as I said, you often hear this model called an LOA model. An LOA stands for licensed only agent. Now, there is a stigma in the industry that LOAs are bad, and that's because people in the past have combined the two models. They will run a downline model, and they will make all of their downlines, who they brought in by selling them the dream of being an entrepreneur and owning their own business, and they will make them license only agents so that those downline agents' commission actually goes to the top, and the owner of the downline or the IMO or the agency, whatever you want to call it, gets all the commission and then disperses it. The problem with combining those two models is that you're bringing people into a downline, telling them that they're going to be their own business owner, and you're going to get a spread from helping them start their own business, yet you've kind of made them very captive. You restricted them with a lot of commissions. If they ever try to leave, they have no power. And so really the combination of the two is what creates that poor stigma. But when you use the LOA model instead to bring people in and tell them they're going to be employees, that they're going to have a job, that they're going to have job security, that they're going to have benefits, it's actually a great model. And you find that there's a lot of people out there that would much rather come in and have a job in the insurance industry than to have to start their own business. So it really just depends on what model you want. And once you decide on that model, you can attract the right people for that model. Now, one other caveat here is that you may have heard of a call center, and oftentimes call centers operate off of an LOA model as well. They're hiring, they're giving a base, they're giving a salary. But the difference with a call center as compared to the way I'm going to talk about it today is that with a call center, the job is very monotonous. It's very boring. You have somebody that comes in, they're just outbound dialing all day.
Hello, John. How you doing today? You mailed in my company a postcard a few weeks back requesting information on penny stocks that had huge upside potential with very little downside risk. Does that ring a bell?
Or they just open their calendar and they're having tons and tons and tons of calls over and over again. There's not a ton of optimization. They're almost always in a physical location. And so that's just different than what we're going to be talking about today when I talk about the LOA model, even though that is typically an LOA model. Now, there are a few main things that make both of these models work to greatly benefit the business owner, which is really what you want, because as the business owner, you've put in the blood, sweat, and tears. You've taken all the risk. You've put in all the work to get this thing to work. And so you do need a business model that is actually going to be beneficial for the business owner, the person that is taking on the risk, the person that is creating the structure for everything else to operate in, for all of the other people, whether it's a downline or your LOA agents and employees, to have all of their dreams and goals to fit inside of. And so don't be afraid to actually structure your business and your agency in a way that is greatly beneficial for you as the person that is running it, starting it, providing all this opportunity for all these other people. So let's quickly jump into a few differences between the downline model and the LOA model, because both of them can work. So with the downline model, as I said, this is the more traditional route. You become an insurance agent. You typically are getting recruited in, somebody that you know, or potentially an Indeed ad that made it seem like, you were getting a job, you were getting pay, brought you into the industry. And now once you're in, you find out that, hey, you're actually starting a business and you're an insurance agent and you need to go run. Sometimes you're given a business model to follow. Sometimes you're told to go buy leads. Sometimes you're told to go, make a list of friends and family. Whatever it is, traditionally, there's going to be some sort of business model for you to follow. But typically you get recruited in. I don't see a lot of insurance agents that just come out of college and say, I want to be an insurance agent. And then they end up seeking and finding IMOs or FMOs to go and join. They typically get recruited in by somebody in their network, in their area that is having success with it. And they see the benefits of that and they want to be a part of that. So you get in and you start selling insurance on your own. You ideally make some sales, you get some policies. Now, you don't have to do this in either of the models. If you have capital, if you have previous business experience, you don't have to start by selling, which is crazy to hear, I know, because most insurance agents, almost all of them, start by being an insurance agent themselves. But I'll tell you, when I started my insurance agency, I never sold a single policy, and we have over 1,000 clients right now. And in this new insurance agency that I'm going to be starting with 3 other partners, me and the other 3 partners, none of us are going to have to sell. Now, we will take some sales so that we can create the sales process, but we're coming into this agency with capital, with experience, with sales experience and all that stuff. And so we don't want to live in that sales part for very, very long. But I digress. So once you started making a few sales, you're to the point where you want to start recruiting some more people and teaching them how to do the same thing. And then as they make sales, you can start to get a cut of that. And that's where you start creating some income that you don't directly have to be the one selling the policy for. Now, typically this doesn't mean that you're not doing any work, because in the downline model, a lot of the time your work switches to training those people. But not only training those people, what we found when you're doing it kind of the old school way is that a lot of the IMOs, FMOs, agencies that are built this way don't have a ton of upfront training. They don't have built out platforms that they've made. They don't have courses for their downline agents, which are all things that would be great to do, but typically they don't have that. So their work turns into answering the phone when people are in home, if they're doing face-to-face. If they're doing calls from Zoom or remotely, then they're constantly in Slack texting back and forth. And so you'd still have to typically do a lot of work. There is this dream of, if I recruit a big enough downline, I'm going to have passive income. And there is a way to do that, absolutely. But if you don't do it the right way, your work kind of goes from selling individual policies to being there to support all of your downline agents. And oftentimes that becomes more work than when you were just selling the policies yourself. Now, that could be a payoff because you can make quite a bit more money doing it that way, but you do have to grow a relatively large downline team in order to make that work. Now, in contrast, we go back to the LOA model, and I already told you guys pretty much everything about it, but it's creating your own business with more traditional principles where you're going to be creating systems, you're going to be creating and controlling your own marketing, you're going to have your own sales systems, and then you're going to go hire somebody and bring them in and train them on your SOPs, strategic operating procedures, and your processes so that everything is repeatable and duplicatable. And the great thing with this model, in my opinion, from what I've seen with the thousands of insurance agents and in my own agencies and my friends' agencies, is that you can typically get the production with a lot higher profit margins out of 3 or 4 agents that you could get with 30 to 40 agents in the downline model. Sometimes, depending on how inefficient the downline models you're comparing yourself to, you can get the same production with 3 to 4 agents that a downline model with 300 agents is getting, which seems to be really, really crazy, but I've seen it time and time again. Okay, so how do we go from being a single agent to having an agency that is self-running and makes you money while you sleep, go on vacation, go about your life, maybe start other businesses, maybe go and start a charity, whatever it may be that you want to do? How do we get to that point. Now today in these points, I'm gonna be focusing on the LOA model because that's where I have the most personal experience and it is the model that I do personally favor. But having worked with thousands of insurance agents, I do have some insights on how to do this properly and create a lot of structures and systems if you wanna do this with a downline model. So if you're interested in hearing those insights on how to do this with systems and make it a lot easier so you can get closer to that passive income dream with a downline model, put downline or something in the comments below and I'll know that you're interested and I'll make that video in the future. Okay, number one, you need to be able to control your marketing or have your own fully unique lead source. If you don't have that, you don't have anything of value. Nobody's gonna wanna come work for you or be hired by you if we don't have a strong foundation by controlling our own marketing or having our own very unique lead source. It's gonna be very hard to do anything else. That's the foundation, that's the starting point. And by the way, this is a part 2 video. I already made a video about how to start an insurance agency from scratch, and I walked you through some of the foundational steps as a single agent starting out that you need to do in order to get to this point. So if you're interested in watching that, I'll link to that video at the end of this so you can go check that one out. Okay, so once you have that skill of controlling your marketing or finding a very unique lead source that other agencies that are going to be competing for the same talent pool don't have access to, we want to perfect that with one person. So for most people, that's going to be you as the agency owner that is working that marketing source, the lead source, or your own marketing that you control from running Facebook ads or YouTube ads or Google ads or whatever it is, or TikTok ads. One of my friends has built his entire agency to $200K a month off just TikTok ads. But the point is you need to have one person that's going to be dialing that in, creating the processes that can be replicated by anybody else that you hire in the future. And it's almost always best to have you as the owner be the one to do this so that when you go to hire other people, you can train them on this process. But again, if you're in a place where you have a lot of capital and maybe sales isn't your strong suit, or maybe managing salespeople and running a sales team isn't your strong suit, then you can either hire a salesperson off the bat to learn and dial in this process with the intention that they'll go on to train anybody else and run the sales team, or you can start it out and then you can hire one person that you could see being a great manager and work alongside you as you just allow them to shadow you and learn the process. Again, these latter two options are going to be for businesses that have more capital, that are ready to run, ready to push, ready to scale kind of off the get-go. So if you're not in that place, then this is going to be you as the agency owner selling and perfecting these processes. So we're not only perfecting the sales processes, but we're taking the feedback from being on the sales calls and perfecting the marketing as well too. So do we need to make any tweaks in the ads? Do we need to make any tweaks in the webinar or VSL or the landing page or whatever we're using to actually convert the traffic from the ads into leads and appointments? Do we then need to go and make any adjustment to the texts that are going out, the emails that are going out? Do we need to make a pre-call video that could make these people more educated before they get on a call with us, shortening the time it takes to close? All of these things we want to be thinking about to make it easier, not only on us as we're taking the initial sales calls, but when you go to hire somebody, they're most likely not going to have the skill level that you do. You almost never get the skill level as the business owner. And so the simpler we can make that process, the easier it is to hire and duplicate yourself as you build out a sales team. But the point is, you need to perfect the marketing to be able to max out one calendar before we think about bringing on anybody else. So that's the very first step, is control your marketing or find a very unique lead source to you and max out either your or a designated one salesperson calendar to where they're completely full so that they can learn the processes. But not only that, so that we can set some benchmarks as for what we're looking for when we go to hire. We can tell them what they can expect to make based on either you selling or this other person selling. We can show them, here's the benchmarks, here's the goals, here's how many sales you should make in a week, here's how many sales you should make in a month. And what that does is it allows you to create on-track earnings, which is what you can put in your job description as their expected amount that they can make in this role, which allows you to attract better and top talent the higher you can get that number. Okay, number 2 is optimize. Now that we can max out one calendar, we are on our way there, but we need to optimize a little bit. So what do I mean by optimize? So in step 1, we maxed it out and we started thinking about what is the process? What is somebody that's going to come in and do this role? What do they need? Now we need to actually go in and create those before we hire this person. So we need to think through, what is the sales process? And that's why we need to have one lead source, because we don't want to confuse somebody with like 5 different lead sources. We don't want to be running 5 different funnels. We don't want to be running 5 different lead sources. We want one so that it's repeatable and you can have the same expectations that everybody coming through there is going to have the same problems and you can follow the exact same process every single time. We're trying to create a conveyor belt effect because that's scalable and that's repeatable. So now that you have this, you've been working on it, you need to create what's called either a sales script, a sales process, or a sales syntax. And you can use ChatGPT for this. So take some of your recorded calls, get the transcript from it, feed it to ChatGPT, and ask it to make you a sales process, a sales syntax, or a sales script from those transcripts. You could even ask for all 3 and see what it spits out and see which one of those is going to fit better with how you learn or how you feel like the people you're going to bring on will learn. We also want to make sure that we're optimized between marketing and sales. And so are you getting a good ROI, return on investment? Or in the ad world, if you're running your own marketing, we call that ROAS, return on ad spend, ideally a 3 to 5x. So if you spend $1,000, you need to be making $3,000 to $5,000. If you spend $5,000, you need to be making $15,000 to $25,000. A 3 to 5x of whatever you're putting in before we think about bringing somebody else on, because we will have to pay them commissions as well too. So we want to make sure that there's a strong margin there before we bring on the first person. Okay, if you're not at a 3 to 5x, here are the things that you need to focus on. You need to look at your ads. Are they strong enough? Are they compelling enough? Are they resonating with your market enough? Your landing page conversion rate. You need to look at the text and email sequences that are going out. You need to look at your show up rate. You need to look at your close rate of live calls. You need to look at the appointment setting script for the people that don't automatically book. What is being said when somebody, either you or someone on your team, dials to go set those appointments? What's the show rate between auto booking and manually booked appointments? And then another huge piece that's oftentimes overlooked is, are you packaging when you go to sell in order to raise your first year commission to as high as it possibly can be? All of these things go into your ROAS, your ROI, your return on ad spend, or your return on investment to get it higher and higher and higher. And to be brutally honest, this process can take anywhere from a couple weeks to an entire year, depending on what skill level you already have and your ability to observe things and make adjustments. This is why tracking metrics is incredibly important in making data-driven decisions. What gets measured gets managed. So I'd recommend, if this is not a strong suit of yours, hire a virtual assistant to track all of the data and KPIs. Okay, number 3 is hire and replicate. Now, I always like to start and recommend hiring in 2s. That way, if you have to let one person go because of performance or whatever, you don't have to start from square one. But you need to make sure that your budget and comp plan for those people can allow it. Okay, your job description is going to be key here. The level of your job description is going to be the level of the talent that you attract. You want to put real time and effort in here and make it feel like as if you're putting the time and effort into an ad that you would put on social media in order to attract clients or anything like that. We want to put that same level of time and effort into the job description, because that's where you're going to get the top talent because of what they're reading, what your culture's like, your on-track earnings, all the stuff that goes into that job description. At this stage, volume is key. And this is where I see so many insurance agents make mistakes. They oftentimes just go and hire somebody that they know, or somebody's, a family member, or someone that they know's daughter or son, just something like that to make it easy. The key here is that you want to have volume. You want to have at least 50 to 100 applications that you go through or through your filtering process. And if there is somebody that you know that you think would be a good fit, have them apply through the application so that you can gauge them compared to those other 50 to 100 people. Now, here's a huge tip to make that process a lot easier, because going through 50 to 100 applications every single time you need to hire somebody, and if you're going to hire 2, you got to double that amount of applications. Here's a huge tip in order to make that a lot easier. Real quick before that, if you're an insurance agent or agency owner and you want to learn how to control your own marketing, that's exactly what my company, Insurance Advertising Masters, does. We've been doing this since 2019 and helped over 1,300 insurance agents. We have a full staff of over 20 people. We have coaches, professional copywriters to handhold insurance agents through the process of building a funnel and a short video that sells for you 24/7, and the Facebook ads that drive your ideal perfect clients to that video so that they book on your calendar and you have true inbound. If you would like help with that, check out the link in the description, or I'm going to put a link somewhere up here. It'll take you to a video that I made that's going to walk you through a little bit more about how we work, and you'll be able to schedule a call with my team after that if you'd like. We're only looking for those that are looking for us. Okay, so here's that tip. There's a software out there called Video Ask. Now, this does have a cost to it, but compared to you doing all the interviews yourself or having to hire a staff member to do these interviews or an admin taking up their time to do these interviews, Video Ask is a huge help. And so what you do is you just go in and set up Video Ask for a series of questions that will be a first layer of the interview process. So as you're getting those 50 to 100 applications, the first thing that we can do to filter those out is to ask a very specific question or multiple questions that are going to be filtering questions. And if people don't answer those right, we immediately just go check those really, really quickly. And that's going to filter your applications down to like 25% of the total 100 that you get or 50 that you get. Then from there, we'll just send them the link to the Video Ask, and that's going to filter it down even more because only a certain percentage of the people are going to take the time to go through and do that first video interview. And so only the right people are going to be showing the initiative to do that. And then from there, you'll be able to actually watch those videos and see what presence they bring, especially if they're going to be a salesperson. You'll be able to tell their tone and kind of see their experience, see if they're nervous or how they carry themselves. It's a really great tool to help with that process because you can't skip the volume, but this allows you to really use technology to get through that volume without having to put your time into it. So I definitely recommend you checking out that Video Ask tool. It's really saved us so much time in our business when it comes to hiring. Okay, number 4, we are up to ramp up. So at this point, we control our own marketing. We've maxed out our sales calendar. We've gone in and optimized. Now we hired somebody. Now we need to ramp them up to KPI. And most of the people that I'm talking about here are going to be salespeople. You should have KPIs in other positions, such as if you have an admin or a support person or really any other position that you have. There should be KPIs and there should be a ramp up period, but they're all less important than the ramp up period for salespeople. If somebody doesn't ramp up within 30 days, it can be a very costly hire to your business. So here's what that process looks like. We got to get them licensed because most of the time you guys are probably not going to be hiring licensed people because licensed people typically come with the expectation that they're going to be a business owner and they oftentimes have a lot of bad habits as well too. So we got to get them through licensing, and during that same time, we can put them through initial product training so they start to understand what it is they're going to be selling. So it's going to be different for every business. So if you're selling life, then you're going to teach them on life. If you're selling health, Medicare, annuities, you're going to teach them on the products that you want them to be selling. And I highly recommend just choosing one core product, and this should coincide with your marketing because your marketing should be bringing in people for one core product as well too. So I'd focus on the core product at first, and especially if your sales process then teaches them to package and include other things as you sell and have your official recommendation, you should talk about those as well too, but mainly focus on whatever that core product is initially. Then once they're in the business, they're hired, they're licensed, they got a little bit of training on products, we got to put them through the training required for selling. For the rest of this video, I'm just going to focus on ramping up salespeople because it's the same process for non-salespeople, but again, it's less important and you can allow longer for other positions. And so salespeople are really where we need to focus because the other positions are much more forgiving. So we got to put them through those processes that we made when we were optimizing. The actual sales process, the sales script, the sales syntax, whatever it's going to be, you probably need to train them on the customer, what their typical pain points are, how they think, what they're going through as you're going to be talking to them, what they're experiencing in life. All those things really help a salesperson get up to your skill level to be able to build rapport, ask the right questions, find the right pain, and then be able to sell the product. Okay, at this point, we're going to have them start taking some calls. Do not give them a full calendar to start off with. I recommend 2 to 3 sales calls a day for the first 2 to 3 weeks. If they start doing really well in the week 1, we can then start filling them with more, but that is the cadence that I would be looking for. Okay, we need to have a very tight communication loop. So what do I mean by this? Especially initially, but honestly, as you're managing a sales team throughout your entire time of managing, tight communication loops are very, very important. We need to be recording all calls. And going back to when we were optimizing, you should have been recording your calls so you can have some examples to train them on. But we need to be recording all of their calls so that we can listen to those and then give feedback. This is incredibly important if you're remote, but also at the same time, if you're in person and you can hear them, we still want to record it because you don't want to just be sitting there giving them feedback live. Sometimes that can help, but a training session where you're going through a call review is the most impactful way that you can improve the performance of a salesperson. This coincides with the fact that we need to have regular sales training. So I recommend having a daily sales meeting every single day, Monday through Friday. Almost no insurance agents do this, but the ones that do have incredible results at ramping people up quickly and maintaining a high performance sales team. So with that tight communication loop, what we want to do is if they're having 2 to 3 calls on their calendar a day, sometimes, they won't all show up. So if they had 3 calls, maybe 2 of those showed up, we want to, at the end of that day, do a call recording either with them on Zoom or in person, or you can record yourself through a software called Loom, going through and listening to their call and giving feedback as to where they need to improve. Now, the key here is we need to be ruthless. And I know this may not come natural to a lot of people, but the fact is these people are representing you in the market. And so if they're not doing a good job of that, then we can't have them at our business. And the other thing too, the most costly thing to your business is keeping somebody at low performance for too long. So really the way that I think about this is I set the expectations properly at the beginning when they come on, is that you're gonna have a ramp up period. And if we don't hit KPIs within the first 30 days or the first 60 days, I like 30, but this can be up to you, then you're not gonna make it on the team. Everybody needs to be at minimum KPI to stay on the team. When you set those expectations, they know they're coming into a culture and an environment that fosters performance, which top talent is gonna like. So they have the right expectations and you have the right expectations. So if somebody doesn't hit the KPIs, they're just not on the team anymore. And that's just how it is. But the way that we can quantify and actually perform and manage on this is with that tight communication loop. And so after every single day, or at least every couple days, you want to give them feedback. And when you're giving them feedback on a call review, just focus on one main thing. And then you want to listen over the next couple days. Did they change that? Did they actually make an implementation of what you taught? And that's where I have like a 2-strike rule. I don't go 3 with that. If I have to tell somebody the same thing multiple times, 2 is fine sometimes if they have potential. But if I have to tell them 2 times over doing a call review one day, and then I have a few days for them to implement, and then I do another call review and have to tell them the exact same thing and they don't change, they're showing me a pattern that they don't have adaptation. If they can't adapt, they won't get better and they're just not going to make it, and we have to let them go. But that tight communication loop is how we get them better quickly. And then how do we know that they've ramped up? Well, they're at our minimum KPI that we have set for the team at 30 days, or they're at least really close to hitting it to where we want to give them a few more weeks potentially in order to hit it. And how do we set that KPI? Well, that's why it's super important for you or somebody to set those benchmarks initially, because you know from selling how many you can close, how many you're closing from live calls, what the normal show up rate is going to be. All those benchmarks we have, and we'll put you at like the gold standard. Maybe you're not the best salesperson that will ever come through your organization, but your duty is to get pretty good at it. And so I would set the KPIs at somewhere around 70 to 80%. It could be 100% of what you're doing if that's the expectations that you have. But those benchmarks come from you, and that's why it's so important that we max out your calendar or whoever your designated initial salesperson is, so that we can have those benchmarks when we bring somebody on. Okay, and so we're going to repeat steps 3 and 4 over and over and over again until you have a team that's too big for you to actually handle. And then at that point, you could hire a sales director, or you can start delegating tasks that are going to allow you to get into higher leverage positions in the agency. But it's just going and hiring and then ramping them up, hiring and ramping them up, and then managing through those daily sales meetings. And there's a few other tools that we use like end of day reports and things like that. But the truth is that at this point in your business, it's kind of monotonous because you're just bringing people on, teaching them how to sell, seeing if they actually rise to the occasion. If they don't, we let them go. If they do, they stay on the team, and we just keep growing the team. And then you'll have other problems that arise, such as having to scale marketing, having to start hiring more admins and support to help depending on what types of products you sell. But we start with sales. We get really good at finding and hiring the right people and ramping them up. And that's where you can really start growing and scaling your business. And these people are all making sales for you, well, you no longer have to make the sales. And as we can continue, we just delegate and delegate and delegate. And that's where it turns into a self-growing business. And that's where it takes us to number 5, keep leveraging yourself out of the business. If your true desire is to have a self-sustaining business or a self-growing business so that you can go focus on something else, which not everybody needs to have that desire. Your desire could just be to scale really, really large, and all the steps up to this point are going to lead you there. But if you do have a desire to go start another business or retire early or whatever it may be, where you're no longer the one driving everything in your business, you have to keep leveraging yourself out of the business. So the first step to this this is to categorize everything you're doing into how much money that it makes you. So at this point, you probably aren't selling much anymore. If you are, you've probably given yourself only the highest potential clients. So if you're a Medicare agency, maybe you no longer sell Medicare, but you only sell annuities because those will make you a lot more money. Or maybe you're not selling at all, but your highest leverage activity is managing the sales team. But there's probably some other things that you're doing in the business that are not making you as much money, like putting out fires, managing other people, coaching and training your support staff, coaching and training your admins to get more efficient. So we really need to start thinking and categorizing what are all the things that I do and list them in order of what makes you the most money to what makes you the least money, and just start delegating the things that make you the least money to new positions in the business. Because as you bring on more salespeople, the business is going to make more money, which is going to allow you to hire other people and buy back your time. So to really get to a self-sustaining or self-growing business that doesn't have a ton of vision, but it can still be a great business, here's the level of people that you're probably going to need. You're going to need an admin, or we like to call them CSM, customer success managers. Their sole focus is only focusing on the people that are current clients. And in this type of business, one person can handle a lot of clients, depending on what types of products you sell. If you're selling life, they can probably handle up to 500 clients because you don't get a lot of support. If you're selling Medicare, it's going to be a little bit less than that, but depending on how much support you're getting is going to dictate how many people you need in this role. But this is somebody that's going to fully take over when your clients have questions, when they're calling in, anything that they might need to talk to the carriers for, any of that type of stuff. Second is going to be a personal assistant that's going to help you just manage your time and do all of the little tasks that you don't like to do that don't make you a ton of money. Then you'll probably want to hire a virtual assistant, or you could just give these duties to your personal assistant if they're really strong in financial tasks. But we want somebody in there that's constantly tracking all of the data. And we can have a lot of this automated, but you do want a human's eyes on there for QA, quality assurance, making sure that data is correct. So when we make data-driven decisions, it's coming from factual data. Then if you don't love running the marketing, you'll probably want to hire a marketing person or an in-house media buyer is what they're called. Or at this point, because you've controlled your marketing, you have a funnel that's working, you have ads that have a proven track record, outsourcing to an ad agency could make sense at this point, but having somebody in-house is always going to be cheaper. And then lastly, the last thing I would probably delegate if you don't want to keep this is going to be sales management, because sales is going to be the thing that makes you the most money. So I'm not saying stay actually selling, but managing the sales team and training the sales team is probably the highest leverage activity that makes the most money for most businesses. So if you like sales, then I would stick with sales for as long as possible. If you like marketing, I would stick with marketing for as long as possible, because these are going to be the two highest areas for a business that's scaling and growing that are going to generate revenue. So whichever one you prefer doing more, I would encourage you to be the function head of that department, either the leader of sales, the sales director, or the marketing director, and then hire somebody else for the other. And then when you're fully ready to step out, you can replace yourself in either the marketing director seat or the sales director seat. And at that point, you have all these different areas from admin and fulfillment of your clients and making sure that they're good at all times so that your retention stays really high. You have somebody in charge of marketing, so you're constantly bringing in new people. You have somebody in charge of sales to make sure that we're converting those new people. And then as you have those teams, you can delegate somebody to sales manager, and then somebody to sales director, somebody to media buyer, to lead media buyer, to head of marketing. And then with all of the admins or CSMs, you can just take one person and make them the leader. And at that point, you've got your first level of leadership. And that size of team can actually be an 8-figure business. You don't really need to start thinking about a second layer of leadership until you're getting close to doing 8 figures. So that small a team can really get you, one, a giant business, but it also gets you a self-sustaining business. And if you have somebody that's in there that's visionary, once you step out, it can be a self-growing business as well. Awesome. That's it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please hit the like button below. Please make sure you subscribe, and any other videos that you want, let us know in the comments. And I'll make sure to go link the part 1 of this video in the description below, or you can find it right here. And that's going to really get you set on that foundation of how to create the agency while you're still a single person. All right, everybody. See you on the next one.